we should.
Okay.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is our address on Black Lives Matter.
Okay, guys. So today we decided to have our live dedicated to Black Lives Matter, the Black Lives Matter movement. As we found, it was very important for us to speak on behalf of it throughout these hard times. So today we're gonna have a spoken word by Caitlin. Go ahead.
Shahada Jack.
And there we go. I couldn't pronounce the name, but we're having a spoken word by her. And we're also going to talk about just a raising awareness of what's going on in the world. And we're going to have a moment of silence for commemorating all the lost souls throughout this times of just police brutality and everything that's going on. We're going to talk about why the Black Lives Matter statement is supposed to be said over the All Lives Matter statement, and what is wrong with the All Lives Matter statement. We'll be talking about Black-owned businesses in our community, how the O'Connor community is affected by the situation, and we're going to also provide resources and outlooks to help support this. And we're going to also give examples of racism throughout the Canadian history as well.
Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker who will be performing a spoken word, like Matthew had mentioned. She's an amazing young woman and also my best friend, Shahada Jack.
Hello, everyone. Can I see handshaking in the camera? Woo-woo, if you can hear me.
There.
Yes.
Wait,
Good.
give me a second. I'm gonna.
Now, the first thing I'm going to ask is that everyone goes on mute during the performance, just so that you don't get any background sound. All right. First thing I'm going to say is Happy Juneteenth, everyone. For those of you that don't know what Juneteenth is, it's we take a day to take up space and to acknowledge the efforts of the Black community in terms of social justice, especially in the US, but that has impacted how Canada views our Black folk as well. So that is Juneteenth for everyone that doesn't know. I would also like to say that I appreciate the OCS Council for giving this opportunity for their Black youth voices to be heard, giving this opportunity for you all to have the chance to educate yourselves on what's not only going on today, but what's been going on for centuries in our history, and finally taking that time to acknowledge it. Now, the piece I'll be performing today is a piece that I've written in December, and this piece is just about police brutality against especially Black men in the Black community. So I just want you to take a second to let that sink in, that this is a piece that was written long before the death of Ahmaud Arbery, the death of George Floyd, the death of Breonna Taylor, and so many others. This is not a fight to be had, but a conversation to be had. And I hope that I can pass that along with my poetry. So as I perform, feel free to snap me to the camera. Feel free to blow up the comment section, all right? Here we go. This piece is titled Chained to the Streets. Boys in the streets are dying. Mother's cries are haunting my dreams, leaving me behind nothing but their memories. Not even able to make what can be story. Black boy, eyes filled with sorrow. You were fooled to believe that there is no purpose in the possibility of tomorrow. That your bulletproof attitude is the reason why bullets will come for you, but not the cancer in history known as white man's fear. The same men that are meant to serve and protect, but are also told to put you to death at any sign of a threat, told to be made an example of, told to be put down like a rabid dog meant to lie with its fleas. You are known to society as a disease. But yet, they will use your beauty to sell magazines and culturally appropriated movies, and they will use your stories, the same ones they use to justify keeping you in the streets, to create best-selling novels profiting off of their racism. You see, they will always want to use your beauty, but not your pain. Your face, but not your name. Your culture without your history. They will use you until there is nothing left. Until, like all wild animals, Black boys have gone extinct. A genocide years in the making. They've done this by making young Black girls fear bringing Black men into this world. As a young Black girl, I know. As a young Black girl, I'm ashamed that I was born into this world. have let society stereotypes a man to one day be the mother of a black boy or the role of black man. But how can you be expected to live your free when you still feel like a slave, but this time change the streets? Boys in the streets are crying for mother's cries are haunting my dreams, leaving me behind. But there's memories, not even able to get nothing. Thank you so much for having me.
That was amazing. Wow.
And thank you. And I hope that as you watch the presentation, that you take in every word that is being said, and I hope you take the opportunity to educate yourselves. Thank you so much, OCS Council. Enjoy the rest
Thank
of
you.
your day. And
Thank
I also just want to put in
you.
this is not just a moment, it's a movement, and to acknowledge that. All right.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Wow.
That was so good.
That was
That
really
was
good.
good.
Okay. All right. So with that being said, it's time to go on to a little bit of history and just awareness about what's going on in the U.S. So for those of you who may have heard or may not have heard, we're going to talk a little bit about George Floyd. George Perry Floyd Jr. was born October 14th, 1973, in Fayetteville, North Carolina, U.S. Floyd was a father of 5 kids and even had 2 grandchildren. The 46-year-old grew up in Houston and was a very talented athlete. He also played a very big role in Houston's developing hip hop music industry, with appearances on various DJ Screw mixtapes in the 90s. Unfortunately, this was not the most stable source of income. He could never find real opportunities and in 2007, he was arrested and charged with armed robbery in connection to a home invasion. He ended up spending 5 years in prison. When he got out back in 2014, he found steady work in Minneapolis as a truck driver and a security guard at a restaurant with dance nights. The customers loved him. The hardworking father could no longer afford his expenses due to the pandemic and struggled to find work. This resulted in Floyd using counterfeit bills to make purchases for necessities for him and his family to live. A store clerk then had called the cops on George as it was suspected that he was trying to purchase something out of his store with a counterfeited $20 bill. The cops came, arrested, and sat down Floyd outside as they investigated the situation. He was later knelt on the neck by Officer Derek Chauvin. For 9 minutes, George voiced his struggle to breathe, but it meant nothing to any of the 4 police officers assisting his arrest. People surrounded the cops, pleading to allow George to breathe as he was being detained and in an unjustified manner. Unfortunately, George was then suffocated by the weight of Chauvin due to resisting arrest, causing his death. The death of George Floyd resulted in an uproar of protest as many could no longer bystand the discrimination and systemic racism within the police anymore. Floyd's family is now left to mourn and live with the absence of their father, husband, brother, and son. The death of George Floyd is not uncommon. It is not the first, second, nor third time something like this has happened within the Black community. In fact, there are thousands of deaths due to police brutality per year in the United States. Names like Breonna Taylor, Trayvon Martin, and the more recent Rashard Brooks should ring a bell, but there are hundreds more who have gone uncovered and that must be acknowledged. Okay, on the next slide. In commemoration of all these lost souls, I would like to take a moment of silence to reflect and pray for them and their families. Let there be light to this darkness. Thank you. We'll now have a 10-second grace period where we think and reflect and pray for these lost souls. Beginning now. Thank you. And on to the next part of the slide.
So it was already talked about what is Juneteenth, but I'm just going to quickly summarize it again. So Juneteenth is a holiday celebrating the liberation of those who had been held as slaves in the United States. It is the day of emancipation of the last remaining enslaved African Americans in the Confederacy. So just as our lovely keynote speaker said, Juneteenth represents everyone who's been freed, and that's why you've probably seen it trending today on Twitter. And it's great that we could have this day to reflect on all those lives. Next slide.
Your microphone's on mute. Yeah, Kayla, your microphone's on mute.
Sorry, guys. Okay, so in a world surrounded and rooted in technology, not knowing and educating yourself on the issues of today is being complicit and turning a blind eye to injustices. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the City of Toronto partnered with Black Torontonian leaders and organizations to create and implement a four-phase process in confronting Black racism. So this 5-year plan leverages the talents, knowledges, and experiences of Black residents and Black organizations. So the action plan includes 22 recommendations and 80 actions to address the 5 issues on the PowerPoint here. Next slide, please. Our media is also so heavily influenced by Black culture. It's crucial to acknowledge and recognize its talent, origin, and history. So, as Sharon had mentioned, the film 13th is named after today's holiday, the 13th Amendment. So, this Emmy winning documentary follows history from slavery through the mass incarnation of Black people in the United States. It shows that though slavery was abolished, a new kind of forced labor is indentured in the servitude and the system of America called the American Prison Industrial Complex. Dear White People, one of my favorite shows, it's comedic, lighthearted, and moving, and it's a show about a student radio personality who is addressing and dealing with complex cultural politics of race, and it pertains to her and her classmates. Another one of my favorites, When They See Us, is a true story about the Central Park Five, which is a group in New York City of teens who were forced to confessing a murder they did not commit. Years later, they were proven innocent by DNA evidence after already having spent years in prison. Here are also some songs: All Right by Kendrick Lamar, Where Is the Love by Black Eyed Peas, Be Free by J. Cole, and Glory by John Legend and Common, which is from the movie Selena, also a really good movie. They embody an image of injustice and inequality within the justice system, as well as captures an image of overcoming struggles and obstacles all together as one. Next slide, please, Sharon. Okay.
Okay, so just we often associate racism with the US, but there's actually a lot of examples of racism in Canada. Can you go to the next slide, please? So racial segregation is the separation of people or groups of people based on race in everyday life. So even though slavery was abolished here in Canada in 1834, the segregation of Black people went on for many years after, and we still see racism in Canada today. So one example is until 1870, Black men could not claim that they were free men in New Brunswick, which means that they didn't have the same rights as everyone else. Next slide, please. So even in education, there have been legally segregated common schools in the early 19th century, and the last racially segregated school closed in 1983, which actually isn't too long ago. There were also cases with trustees trying to prevent Black children from attending certain schools, and in 1850, there was a separate schools clause in the Common Schools Act, which allowed people to create separate schools based on race and promoted racial segregation. Next slide, please. Even in universities, with the universities that a lot of us are familiar with in Canada, Queen's Medical School voted to ban Black students from admission in 1918, and this remained until policy, although it was not enforced until 2018 on their records. And Dalhousie, U of T, and McGill Medical Schools also had bans against Black students at different points in history. This also happened with nursing in the 1940s, where Black women were rarely able to get into nursing school. And in some places like Nova Scotia, they were restricted to only treating Black patients in hospitals. With housing, there have been land titles throughout history with restrictive clauses where people are able to place these covenants that they can't rent or sell to those of African descent. So in 1920, these prevented Black citizens from buying homes in Calgary beyond certain boundaries. And in 1946, in Sarnia, which is not too far from here, there were a community of 100 cottage lots that could only be owned by white people of a certain background. This systemic racism still continues, with people being turned away when seeking to rent places to live as a result of race. This also happens with employment, where those of Black race were systematically denied memberships to unions which protect workers, and white business owners and government agencies did not traditionally hire Black people. And even in the military during World War I, there was a creation of an all-Black unit in Canada, with white soldiers refusing to fight along Black men. So this also continues to commercial establishments, so with theaters, barbershops, restaurants, recreational facilities, and even in death and cemeteries, there was segregation, and Black people were not allowed to have the same privileges as white people. So this is like the start of the systemic racism in Canada, and I just thought it was really important to highlight that. We further see this in transportation, with not being allowed to buy like cabin tickets in a steamer, or sit inside a carriage with other passengers. And even for immigration, the Canadian Immigration Act of 1910 gave the government power to stop the entry of immigrants based on race. Thank you.
Now, I also want to discuss the fact of what is wrong with the statement "all lives matter." Next slide, please, Sheila. So the statement that all lives matter is developed to ethically satisfy our desire to reveal that we believe in equality throughout us all. In reality, it actually contradicts the Black Lives Matter movement. All lives matter ignores the current proof that actual like all lives matter don't actually matter, as there is still evidence of discrimination, segregation, and prejudices used against people based on their race, ethnicity, or gender. If all lives did matter, then the Black Lives Matter movement or any public statement regarding an inequality due to race would never have to be made, because situations like this would never arise. Unfortunately, these situations are still present and will still continue to be present unless a change is made. All lives will not matter until Black lives do, and in order for Black lives to matter, we must protect and fight in order for people to acknowledge the inequalities we are treated with. A common misconception. Oh, one second, one second. A common misconception of the statement "Black Lives Matter" is that it degrades the other value, the value of other races, and it is to be seen as the only race that does matter. This is not true. The BLM movement simply exposes the truth to us that all Black lives haven't mattered, not just recently, but this entire time. Go ahead, Sheila.
So now we'd like to take the time to acknowledge some Black-owned businesses in our own communities.
To name a few of these businesses, we got Entertainment Kitchen, where their menu has a variety of Caribbean food, and a place I personally go to, Cut Kings, a place where they give quality haircuts.
Some other places to name that are totally worth visiting are Chris Jerk, Rum Corner, Caribbean Queen, and so much more. So I really advise to educate yourselves on these businesses and to maybe use their services.
Go ahead, next slide. It is very important that we support Black-owned businesses. To show support of the Black community, a way of doing this is to support Black business owners and entrepreneurs. Also, a lot of these businesses have elements of or inspired by Black culture. Supporting these businesses are a way of celebrating that culture. And you may know that a lot of these big companies have a past of or have done things that are racist. Choosing to support Black businesses is a way of standing for something and putting your money into something good.
It is also important to acknowledge a racial wealth gap that exists due to redlining and segregation in the past. So by supporting Black-owned businesses, it will help create more opportunities and help build generational wealth. By doing so, it will also strengthen families, employees, and other business owners who live in low economy areas. The more these businesses open up, the more job opportunities are presented to people who are affected by the high unemployment rate. Thank you.
And now here is a quote by Martin Luther King, and it says, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And what this basically is saying is that if injustice exists anywhere, it is a negative force and is harmful even to places where justice currently exists. In other words, injustice can spread and should not be tolerated anywhere. This statement has a central theme of interconnectedness, and Martin Luther King argues that the forces that harm a specific area harms the whole. Basically, an example is the death of George Floyd, and that death became a very big impact to the whole world. Next slide. Another quote I chose is never, never be afraid to do what's right, especially if the well-being of a person is at stake. Society's punishments are small compared to ones we inflict on our soul when we look the other way. This is a very self-explanatory quote, and it's basically saying to stand up for what's right, be courageous, be brave. We all have that leader within us. When two people are fighting and when we look away and we walk away, doesn't that hurt our soul even more? Even if those two people who are fighting are older than us, who cares? We're all human beings, and standing up for what's right is right. Next slide. Another quote I chose from Martin Luther King is, darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. And what he's saying is that fighting will not solve every problem, only peace can do that. He showed an example of this when he never shot one bullet when he fought for his own freedom. He was saying that you can't always solve your problems the easy way, even if it's faster. He's also saying that you'll never get anywhere if you solve your problems the easy way around. He's saying that if someone is being mean to you and you be mean right back, neither of you will get anywhere. Thank you.
Okay, the next slide we have is ways to support. With everything going on right now, posting does a lot, but doing more and going to protest, signing petitions goes a long way. So here is a link called Black Hearts TO that gives you categories on petitions to sign, protests to go to, phone numbers and emails that you can call and get engaged to make a difference. I added arrows that tell you what part to sign, what part if you can want to make it anonymous in case you don't want your name out there. It's all there. So the next slide are ways to find support. With everything going on right now and all the deaths that are being brought to attention, I feel like there's a lot of people out there community that you can join and people you can call. There's a black hotline 24/7 that you can call, as well as there's a website if you want to do an online chat. There's different counselors and other clinics that can help you and as well. There's also different websites on here for mental health awareness and Black health awareness, which is so immensely important to talk about. So please screenshot this.
Should I repeat that last part what you just said? It kind of cut out a little bit.
Oh, so do you want me to say it again, the last part?
Yeah, the last part. Wait, so like, please screenshot this.
So yeah, please screenshot this if you want to take some time to look through it, and if you know anyone who might benefit from this information, please share it.
Perfect.
All right, so the O'Connor community is, like, obviously we're from O'Connor, and O'Connor Council is bringing this to you, and we want to talk a little bit about multiculturalism in the O'Connor community itself. And to start off, Canada and Toronto even more and Toronto region, it is a very multicultural, it's one of the most multicultural cities in the world. And Toronto is very proud of its cultural diversity, and it celebrates that cultural diversity in many ways. And the cultural diversity allows everyone to experience and learn, understand other people's cultures and points of views, which helps create a society of people filled with open-mindedness, inviting and understanding and like loving community. And this is also very true with our own inviting community at OCS that cherishes growth built on everyone's differences through different mindsets and points of view.
And as Chase said, our community here at OCS is very culturally and ethnically diverse. We have many people from many different backgrounds, all in acceptance of one another and their differences. And an example of this acceptance of diversity is Unity Day, where we have an interaction of many people from many different cultures. And we take the time to appreciate the various cultural groups, their traditions, their dances, and more specifically, their food. prepared by these people. And within our diverse student body, we also have a very prominent Black youth community. And through Black History Month assemblies during February, along with the morning announcements during that month, we've attempted to give them a platform so that they can express their feelings and educate their peers about what they've been through, what the struggles have been.
And at OCS, we have always commemorated the history that we should all learn from, so that we can move into the future and with correct mindsets about the world and what it should be. And we've celebrated, and we will continue to celebrate the cultural diversity of the in the O'Connor community, as well as all of again the Black Lives Matter isn't a moment; it's a movement, and we want to continue that. Moving like we should always have that with us. And so to wrap up,
Thank you, Shaywan and Gabriel. That was very nice. Um, with that being said, that's gonna conclude our presentation on behalf of it. If you guys do want to reach out, talk, or even uh, have other ways for maybe you think that we can support in a more inclusive way or anything like that, please hit us up on social media. Anything you want us to post, or if anything that you think is beneficial for the community, or if anything you want to say particularly. You can also voice your opinions throughout the comment section right here, throughout our social media inboxes, stuff like that. Just reach out and make sure one another, we all understand that this, as Shiwan said, is not a moment, it's a movement, right?
Yeah, we want to support and we want to we want to allow your voices to be heard too. So thank you for watching.
Please go sign petitions.
Yeah, it
Yes,
doesn't stop
please.
here.
Yes, please. All right. Well, I think we can close this off. I think we did a very good job, and I hope everyone's enlightened and educated. And if anything, please further your education, further your knowledge, because it's very important.
Oh, last thing, I just want to reiterate that council has made a commitment to donate their upcoming civies money to Black Lives to help support and to again make this a movement and continue on this movement.
Yeah. All right. I think we're good. So we'll see you guys
Thank
next
you
time.
for joining.
Deuces.
Bye.